Soviet Ukraine, year 1933. Ukrainians are dying on the street as a result of starvation. At the same time, the Soviet government in Moscow is exporting 1.7 million tons of cereals and over 700,000 tons of wheat into the world, which is already facing issues due to a surplus of wheat produced, which hammers the price of wheat into the ground. The result? Death of 3 to 5 million Ukrainians. But what caused this? Dry weather and low traction power caused 2 bad harvests in all of Soviet Union in 1931 and 1932. Many other areas of the country were famished, but Ukraine suffered the most. Ukraine had a very high-yield harvest in 1930. However, as a result of collectivization policy in which all farms were controlled by the government, Soviet authorities set exceedingly high quotas for Ukrainian collective farms. This meant that, after a great harvest of 1930, the government quotas were double in 1931 for many areas in Ukraine, and the farms had to give double the amount of their grain harvest to the state. The Soviet Union was more focused on exporting grain rather than feeding its people. In 1930, Ukraine produced 30% of the Soviet harvest, but provided 35% for the state. In 1931, while that harvest yield fell to 28%, this percentage of grain collected by the state was 32%. Grain procurement did not decline enough to prevent the famine. Moreover, the grain that was left after collection by the state declined from 1.7 kilograms per person per day after the harvest of 1930 to 1 kilogram per person per day after the harvest of 1931, and then only 0.5 kilograms per person per day after the harvest of 1932. At the same time, about 1.8 million Soviet kulaks, who were large farmers and were labelled as class enemies by the state, were deported and exiled for treason or simply killed. In 1930, 2 state police were sent to Ukrainian farms to root out any food that they could find. Peasants who could not meet the quotas were ordered to surrender any livestock they had to the state. Other Ukrainian collective farms were blacklisted and had to surrender 15 times their quota. They were also not allowed to trade or receive deliveries of food, and they soon became death zones. A complex combination of primarily government policy, but also poor weather conditions, caused this horrible tragedy. Some historians even say that Stalin purposely caused famine in Ukraine in order to suppress Ukrainian nationalism, which was on the rise since 1920s. What is your opinion?